Hi guys, I'm Warren Satz, and I'm going to talk to you about my charisma development training plan I created for myself and implemented over the past 4 weeks. Each week I focused on a different tactic that could strengthen other people's perception of my charisma in daily life. I'll jump right into each week by telling you the key things I try to focus on and then analyze how I did. Week 1 focused on showing empathy. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, which is different to sympathy. Sympathy is just agreeing and understanding with the other person you're communicating with. Another thing to keep in mind when showing empathy is the frame of reference that people are talking in. Since vantage points differ, it's important to recognize them as they can be a barrier to communication. It's important to use the same figures of speech, repeat key words they use in response, and you'll likely to encourage more active listening from the people you're talking to. You can also express your understanding, take figures of speech one step further, and get to understand their true problem and effectively provide them with a solution. Empathy wasn't the easiest week for me. I do have the ability to put myself in other people's shoes, yet sometimes I have trouble relating to them and telling them that I'm attempting to see the situation from their perspective, which is a big barrier to our communication. I also did not make sure to use the same frame of reference with some people I interacted with. I believe that if I could have recognized and acknowledged their frame of reference in the conversation we were having at the time, I could have furthered the effectiveness of our conversation. And that's about it for week 1. Week 2 dealt with active listening. And active listening is essential to coaching and mentoring. It allows you to be a better consultant because people that active listen improve their relationship with others on a constant basis. Listening takes hard work and commitment. It allows for understanding, summarization, and emotional and task support, as well as encouragement. Some tools for active listening are avoiding distractions, establishing good eye contact, letting the person speak first, listen for both fact and feeling, use body language effectively, the acronym LUNA, which stands for Listening for Understanding and Not Agreement, which is very important. You need to acknowledge what the other person is saying. You need to ask you questions. You need to be open to learning from this person. And you could also always smile appropriately. I've practiced active listening a lot in the past, and I've tended to excel a lot in it. And I believe that my success in active listening over week 2 could be attributed to my previous practice with active listening. But some of the new tools that I tried to really implement were Luna, which was listening for understanding and not agreement, because sometimes I tend to just agree and want to go through the motions and get through the day when listening for understanding might serve me better down the line. Week 3 dealt with goal setting. A goal is an event, circumstance, object, or condition a person tries to attain. Goal setting is luckily well accepted as a motivational tool. However, it is important to differentiate between goals by who they're for and what the intended goal is, such as coaching goals are connected to the company, but mentoring goals are connected to an individual. However, for mostly all goals, it's good to have them be SMART goals. And SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Are you fucking kidding me? SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Specific goals are goals that are more specific than mission statements, and the shorter they are, the better. It's important to also measure your goals, whether they be short-term goals, which is a week to a year, or medium goals, 2 to 5 years, or however long you want to make it. It's just important that it's measurable. Deadlines allow for a measurement of performance, which is really what we're looking for out of the goal. Goals also need to be achievable. How are you going to reach your goal? You need to set out some common use strategies and tactics. Obviously, the more complex action plans require some sort of project management. Project management is a process and activity of planning, organizing, motivating, and controlling resources to achieve specific goals. The primary challenge of project management is to achieve all of the project goals and objectives while honoring the preconceived constraints. The primary constraints are scope, time, quality, and budget. The secondary and more ambitious challenge is to optimize the allocation of necessary inputs and integrate them into met predefined objectives. And that's all for just achievable goals. Next is relevant. It's important to stay focused, on track, and on your goals. And that's why it's important to constantly check yourself and make sure that your goal is still relevant to other goals that you may be trying to implement as well. And then lastly, going back on time bound, you need to make sure that the goal has a specific end date in order to continue the self-improvement process. There's also a bad side of goal setting, as they can sometimes cause inflexibility. Goals also cause tunnel vision, and they take the fun out of tasks and sometimes can cause a lot of stress. I'm personally a good goal setter. I have a clear vision of where I want to go in life and what steps I need to take to achieve those goals. However, I am enjoying my last year of no responsibility for now. The final week, week 4, dealt with giving feedback. When giving feedback, it's important to watch what you say. And when you do that, you need to use empathy. You need to choose your words carefully. You need to look for opportunities to pick people up and not to put them down. You need to avoid making stupid mistakes through laziness and absurdness. And you should always leave people with a choice at the end, so they feel like they're contributing to what you're saying and what your goals are. It's also important to give frequent feedback. Allow someone to improve. Get it quickly and give it often. Give informal praise often. People say that you should give 7 positives for every 1 negative. And if you notice a pattern and can hitch onto one strong negative and find large amounts of mundane positives, it could be very good for that person. You also need to interpret your observations well. It's important to collect the facts of the situation in a timely manner, but it's also important to not rush into giving them feedback right away. You need to interpret what you saw and give, effective feedback. And effective feedback is often specific feedback. It needs to avoid generalities, and it needs to have key area pinpoints of concern, Not be a generalist, you need to be specific. Minimizing generalist remarks helps you avoid exaggeration, and specific feedback is behavioral feedback, and it focuses on behavior and not personal characteristics of the person. You also need to express your feelings. Facts followed by feelings gets the point across, and feelings are portrayed more effectively this way by building credibility, and it deflects hard blows by sharing focus and sharing skin in the game. You also need to solicit feedback on your feedback, which is kind of confusing, but you need to make sure that they also have an opportunity to improve you, and you can show that through active listening, seeing when they want to, impart some knowledge on you with their nonverbal communication, or you can use questions to get this out of them. Next is overcoming resistance to feedback. So obviously, everything's not going to go according to plan all the time. People are going to resist feedback, so it's important to appeal to that person's needs at the time you need to be giving feedback, and you need to realize what's in it for them and maybe give it to them in a more shorter term, maybe not a later term thing, depending on the situation. And you need to make sure that they're in the right frame of mind, because a frustrated employee or a preoccupied employee or a stressed employee, a tired employee is no good. So if one of those need to be addressed, they need to be addressed at that moment in time. It's also important to think about what channel that you're communicating with this person in. Face-to-face contact is always great, but too many emails, too many texts, too many formal appraisals could be bad. You need to be open to what that person is also best receiving the information through. But in the end, the more channels you use, the more likely you'll hit the right one, and avoid repetitiveness because it's really annoying. It's also important to have an empowered attitude. No one wants to follow, a not empowered person. So communication effectiveness is directly proportional to their attitude. Positive attitude helps a person communicate, looks at things from a positive perspective, and look for the good in all people. Another thing to focus on, which kind of falls into empowered attitude, is minimizing defensive communication, as that can really help you bond if you're not getting your back up with people constantly. And another way to help you bond with people is to collect tidbits of information from them and repeat them and use them and show that you're listening, and definitely use names, wife's names, kids' names, family members' names, dogs' names. It's always good to show that you have skin in the game with them and you care for them. This was perhaps my weakest week. I was unable to provide feedback to other people besides myself. I think this can be attributed to simply the lack of people needing advice in my life this week. However, internally, I was able to give myself feedback through hockey and the coaching I was receiving. It required me stepping out of my comfort zone a bit to take the coaching properly. I was apprehensive to this at first, but I'm confident that after I practiced and stepped out of my comfort zone a few times, that I will have lucrative results soon. Overall, I thought the project made me focus on some really valuable areas where I can improve on by using my strengths. So my strengths will help me get over my weaknesses. I think that as a whole, the project was a very positive experience for me. Going through my SWOT analysis, I'm obviously very good at active listening and goal setting. I need to work on showing empathy and giving feedback. I think I need to work on my opportunities to give feedback by showing empathy, where I can use my active listening and my goal setting. So my goal is obviously to gain more opportunities to give feedback, which I can get through showing empathy and using active listening. And lastly, my biggest threat is probably myself. I need to step out of my comfort zone on a whim when the opportunities arise, so I don't lose my opportunities to give feedback to others. And the harder you work at something, the better the results you see. So hopefully I can get this done. Thanks for listening.